Why do I keep seeing people say bias when they should be using biased? Because they don't know. It's a minor arbonapaltia. They've heard the phrase said, but they don't understand how the word is conjugated even though it's pretty standard. Because the sound difference between bias and biased is very subtle, they may assume it's an irregular past tense. People often leave off the final D or T sound when the previous sound is S. I suspect it's because for all three sounds the tongue is against the top of the teeth. People's brains try to save a little energy by combining two similar sounds into one, in this case dropping the second sound. For the same reason, so many people say he's drowning or hell drowned. They are kinda bad at their own native language. The word is drown. The only time you have a D in there is when you add ed as a past tense. He will drown. He's drowning. He drowned. Bias gets the opposite effect. People omit the ed when it's necessary. He's biased. He has a bias. Same reason they say iced tea instead of iced tea. The same reason they say verse instead of verses. They don't know. Same reason people write. I have when I do that every day. Should have I could care less. A part of nowadays. Nowadays now in days of women 2 cameras. People are largely dumb and don't read books anymore. There are so many spelling errors on Reddit, but I could forgive that until it becomes like a material misspelling. When it's the main action verb or description of something, especially when it's in the post title, and they get it wrong. Now that drives me crazy. Like today, there was a post free of grammar or spelling mistakes, except they kept misspelling everything, the literal word everything, did it like 3 times. Only that word. Were they fucking with us, or was it some form of Morse code and they are held prisoner somewhere? You'll also note that there's a usage where people use bias to describe people they are a fan of or biased towards. So you might see a K-pop fan talking about their bias. Not quite the same scenario as the one you brought up, but I figured I'd mention it in case anyone's encountered it and was confused. I think in terms of people actually mixing up biased and bias, people tend not to voice the D in biased. If someone's not much of a reader, bias might be closer to what they actually hear and say. It's also very likely that a genuine mistake was funny enough to people to start picking it up and using it purposefully. Okay, so relieved people aren't saying language changes, so now bias is actually the correct usage. I've seen this type of comment too much on Reddit and it drives me nuts. I hear the opposite. People don't realize bias is a word and say biased in all cases. Because the internet makes people either lazy with their writing, and they don't proofread, or the more likely scenario that they don't know the proper usage to begin with. This is likely a consequence of like nobody reading as much these days, spending too much time on social media, instant messaging, and as someone else already said, a failure of education systems. I see so many confused too. They're Thayer, effect vs effect, as well as some atrocious cases of spelling also. People who aren't native English speakers can get a pass on this stuff. It bothers me almost as much as the worse. There is a major failure in the educational system. There are videos all over YouTube with teachers trying to warn people about how behind the kids are, major behavioral issues too. The standards have been slipping for ages. These things remain invisible until it is far too late. Same thing with people saying hype when it should be hyped. Drives me fucking crazy. I think it's because it sounds like an adjective that ends in ooze. Maybe they are calibrating the bias on a tape machine? At least you didn't see it everywhere, and you did give a specific example. Because schools are failing to teach proper English. People often use bad grammar until a lot of people use it, and then it's just grammar. Meet the new grammar, same as the old grammar.